All right, hi guys. Well, this week we are going to work on something called a Notan. This is kind of a Japanese art form of balancing light and dark. So we are going to take a black piece of paper and cut out our shapes and then flip them and mirror them to reflect what we cut out. But instead of using white paper, we're going to use colored paper today. We have been using so much white paper and toned paper in our sketchbooks. I just thought it'd be fun if we had a little bit of color. The sketchbook's a little small to be doing this in, so we're just going to do it this way. Alright, so supplies you will need. You will need your 9x12 paper that you'll get from me. You'll get a little sheet of black paper. You will need a pencil, a pair of scissors. You can use an X-Acto knife if you so choose, and if your parents so let you. That's totally their call, your call, mine, not my call. You'll need a glue stick, and you'll need a little bit of washi tape. So, to get started, we are going to center our little black paper. Well, it doesn't have to be perfectly centered, but get it in the position you want. And then I'm going to mark that as my top, so I put a little arrow going that way, and then I'm going to mark my corners. Just a light little, so that way when I lift it off, I know where to put it back. This will come in handy later, I promise you. So do the prep work now, and then you won't have to worry about it later. So when I go to lay it back in its position, I can get it right all the time. All right, so what we're going to do, I'm not going to do quite as elaborate as I did with this. I had to cut all of that out with my X-Acto knife, and I want to provide a project that you don't necessarily have to do that with. So we're going to cut out some, or we're going to trace, we're not going to cut at the moment. We are going to draw in some organic shapes. So I'm going to start on my long end, and the first bit of advice is you're going to start on one side and you're going to end on the same side. Along with that, you're also not going to go past the center point. So this is kind of your little work area here. So everything you draw needs to be within this parameter. So I am going to keep this super organic and free-flowing. I don't want to go too far into the corner because I want to be able to get something else in here. So I think most of this is going to be crazy shapes. Okay, so that's my first side. So when I go to cut this, I will cut them out individually and then flip-flop to make my mirrored image. It's lots of fun. I'll show you. So I'm going to put you on fast forward, and I'm going to draw the rest of my shapes. Okay, probably didn't have to put you on fast forward for that. But as you can see, I've got a bunch of organic shapes. 2 rules. Maybe not 2, maybe 1 rule. 2 rules. The first rule is you need to make at least 2 cuts into each side. So like my flame here, I could have just did a flame and flipped it and that was it. But instead I cut another flame out of the center. So make sure you get 2 cuts into each piece. So this one I have my first cut, and then I have 2 more cuts in there. So always make sure you have at least 2 cuts into each piece. I don't know why I said there was 2 rules, but because I think that was the only one. So now what I'm going to do is start cutting out. And again, this is a tricky part because you have to keep track of all of your pieces. So I am going to start here. These might be kind of big scissors for this job. I might regret using these. So I'm going to cut along my... It's much easier to turn the paper as you're cutting. I think we talked about this before. And if you don't get your lines perfect, it's alright. These are just guidelines. You just want the cuts to be nice and clean. Alright, so there's my first cut. So when I line that up, that comes out of there, but this will be flipped out to here. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to cut the second piece out. I know where the second rule came in. It's coming. It's not here yet. We'll get to that in a minute. Okay, now you can obviously see I'm not following my pencil lines identical, especially with this big honkin' pair of scissors. Alright, so now I have two. So this one will be flipped out and it'll line up with those two edges, and this one will line up with that edge. And I have one more piece to cut out of this. Alright, so that's going to go there, and this is going to flip and go there. Alright, so you get the general idea. But I'm not gluing down yet. I am just cutting, so I'm going to leave those right there, and I'm going to put you back on fast forward, and I'm going to cut out the rest of the pieces, and you can watch me kind of lay them out, and then we'll get to the tricky part of gluing. Be right back. Alright. Sorry about my dogs. They are barking at the teenagers who are out in the park or out in the driveway because it's like 62 degrees out and gorgeous. So. Alright, so I got everything cut out. So this is where the tricky part comes in. Alright, so first thing we're going to do is we are going to line up our black sheet and we're going to kind of tape it down. Now don't tape over any of the cut marks because you're going to have to glue and line things up. So carefully tape this down. All four corners. That'll keep everything in place for you because there is not much to this middle piece anymore. Right, that one I might have to mess around a little bit with. Okay, so we've got everything cut out. We've got our centerpiece taped down. Now we get to start gluing. So here's the messy part. All right, get your glue stick out. Also, make sure you have a scrap piece of paper. When you go to glue again, like the last one, you don't want to just put glue on your paper. You want to try and be really, really careful. Oh, and there's the teenage music. All right, so we are going to take this piece that we cut out of here. So this gets mirrored, so it gets flipped out, so it matches up exactly. Okay, so I'm gonna take this and put glue on the back side. So I'm gonna take this piece of paper and get glue. This is just my gluing surface. All right. Here's the second rule that I talked about 5 minutes ago. All right, so you have to line up your edges really well. So this point and this point need to line up perfectly. And then you kind of smooth it out. Now, glue on the front is inevitable. It's gonna happen. Do your best to not get a ton. That's all I can say. All right, so that piece is down. So this piece was in here. So I'm gonna mirror it and I'm gonna flip it this way. And so that corner will kind of meet up with that corner and that corner will meet up with that corner. So I'm gonna put glue on the back side of this. Not too much, but just enough to hold it down. Okay, so we're gonna line up each corner again and then kind of smooth it down. Now we can erase the pencil lines after the glue has dried and after everything's done. All right, and this one was in there, so I'm gonna flip it and it's gonna line up right there. So I'm gonna put glue on its backside. And again, I'm gonna carefully line up those edges. All right, so I'm gonna put you back on fast forward and I'm gonna keep gluing. And then I'll come back and show you how to do the center part. Make sure you get glue to the edges. All right, so I've got the edges all glued down, so I can take my tape off. Now you will be graded on how well things line up. You know, when it comes to grading, it's really difficult in art class because you're all creative and you all have, you know, a different view of what creativity is. So really all I can grade on is technical things. So I try to keep my grading very objective and technical because what one person thinks is beautiful, another person doesn't necessarily think it's beautiful. So I never want you to think that I don't think your projects are wonderfully creative, because they are. But my grading is more technical just because I have to be. Otherwise, you'd all get, 10 out of 10 and everything, because there's some creative element to it. So my goal is for you guys to learn something new in this class, or learn something you didn't know before. And that requires technical learning. So all that being said, I'm so excited. I think you'll all do great on this project. But the technical issue is going to be lining up all of these corners really well. So now we have this randomness, right? Okay, that's really cool as it is. You could actually, that would be a whole nother project in itself, but that's pretty cool. But that's not what we're doing today. So what we are doing is we are lining this up, and I probably should have kept my tape, because now I have to hold it in place while I glue each corner. And that's not always easy, because these pieces are now so small that they can move quite a bit. You can kind of reshape the paper almost, which you can use to your advantage a little bit when you're trying to, like. Anyway, so I'm going to take those two down, and I am going to lift this up and carefully put, without folding it in half. I don't want a big crease in it. I just want to peel it back a little bit and get some glue. Make sure you're getting all the way to the edge again. And then I'm going to lay that down. I'm going to make sure those corners, I'm not worried about the pencil line as much. All right, that one's down. I'm going to go to the opposite corner. Give that a little bit of time to dry. And I'm going to get in here. Again, all the way to the edges. And then I can kind of manipulate this just a tad bit to get that lined up properly. Oh, that one doesn't want to get lined up properly. Okay. Come over here. And hopefully they lay down right exactly where they need to be. Now, I'll give you a little bit of grace, but if there's something that's super off, guess what? I know, sometimes I'm tough. Whoops, my washi was too sticky. Just ripped my paper. All right, and then I'm gonna get that on there. And line up my corners. Right, and then I've got a few pencil marks. You can try and lightly erase them, or you can leave them. I mean, I'm not going to dock points if there's pencil marks. But it looks so much neater if you remove the pencil marks, because I didn't cut very well on my pencil marks, because I Alright, so it's not a super difficult project. It's not extremely time consuming, but there are some technical challenges that you will have to work through. Like not losing your pieces, that's number one. Getting things lined up really well as best you can. And you want 2 cuts in each in each shape. And that's that. So that is your project for the week. I hope you guys enjoy it. And I can't wait to see what you turn in. So have a great week. See you soon.